RadioOrNot.com and SoFloRadio.com present The Nicole Sandler Show. Truth to power, baby.
Call out the instigators, because there's something in the air. We got to get together sooner or later, because the revolution's here, and you know it's right. We have got to get it together. We have got to get it together now.
Welcome to the Nicole Sandler Show. We're broadcasting live on RadioOrNot.com, TalkRadio1.com, SoFloRadio.com, ProgressiveBlendRadio.com, We Act Radio, 1480 AM in Washington, D.C., WeActRadio.com, YouTube podcasters. Welcome to the Nicole Sandler Show. Of course, I am not Nicole Sandler. My name is Jacob Dean. I am the host of Filter Free Radio, which you can find right here on Radio or Not Monday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern. And it is so good to be with you. Nicole is off today. She is at a doctor's appointment, all is well. And she asked me to sit in here. So it's great to be with you. I'll talk a little bit more about myself and tell you a little bit more about who I am and what we do on my show. And I want to welcome real quick my co-host of Filter Free Radio is with me. His name is Mr. Skeptical Scott. Scott, are you there, bud?
Hello.
Hey, good morning. Normally we don't talk until about 7 o'clock at night when we do our show. So, Scott, thanks for getting up here early and doing the Nicole Sandler Show with me.
It's an honor and a privilege to be here. It's worth getting up for.
Amen. It is an honor and a privilege to fill in for Nicole, and we've got a lot of stuff coming up in the show today. Joining us in the second hour is the author and environmental activist Bill McKibben. He has got a fascinating, alarming, shocking new article coming out in the upcoming issue of Rolling Stone magazine. Bill is going to stop by for a couple of minutes in the second hour and talk about this. Basically, there are three really important numbers that we all need to know about as far as climate change is concerned, and why we really only have about 17 years left to really make a significant impact on this. After that, all of the collective scientists' knowledge and data and everything is pointing to game over. So we're going to get into that a little bit later in the second hour, and we'll touch on the droughts and crops and stuff across the nation. This hour, I've got a couple of clips we're going to play from the Agriculture Secretary here in just a couple of minutes. We'll get into that. We'll talk a little bit about corn, because corn crops are one of the targets here, as well as soybeans, and really the effects of this drought are quite extensive. It's not limited to just crops. It gets into livestock. And again, the Agriculture Secretary had something to say about that. And we've got a few clips we'll play coming up in just a couple of minutes here on the Nicole Sandler Show. Will the Batman movie influence the election? This has got Rush Limbaugh in a tizzy. Not necessarily something that I focus on. I try to shut out the poison, and I encourage you to do the same. But Jon Stewart was hammering on this week, and I know Nicole loves Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert as do we. And so I want to get into that. We'll touch base with that. And I want to read to you from an article originally published on occupiedmedia.us, I believe. Let me verify that. Yeah, occupiedmedia.us. It's called A New Declaration by Derrick Jensen. And how we're going to tie that into climate change and what's going on with these droughts. It is significant. That is, all of this is coming up. I wanted to open the show with something that's kind of funny. And also, stick around for just a minute here. We're going to talk about the Disclose Act, some military defense spending on sporting sponsorships, something that I bet you didn't know about and might make you outraged. And so stick around for that. I thought this was kind of funny, and I'm not going to spend more than a couple of minutes on this, but is nudity free speech? Scott, do you think nudity should be free speech? I mean, money is free speech now, right? Money is speech. Nudity is speech, right?
Sure, why not?
Sure.
I don't have any problem with it.
Yeah.
I think if anything, if most people are uncomfortable with the other person's nudity, and if they're comfortable with their own nudity, then hey, more power to them.
I thought this was really cool. This happened yesterday here. I'm coming to you live from Portland, Oregon, and there was an interesting ruling. Let me throw up the picture here for those of us who are watching so you can see what I'm talking about. This is John Brennan. And John went through the airport here in Portland back on April 17th. He was going to take a business trip to San Jose, California. He works with groups down in Silicon Valley, flies out of the Portland International Airport here quite frequently. And as he was going through the security checkpoints, he opted out of the body scanner, and he decided to go through the metal detector and opt for the full body pat down. And apparently, after he was patted down, the TSA agent had detected some nitrates on the gloves that he used to check Brennan. And this, because, as I mentioned, John Brennan, this fellow, flies out of Portland quite frequently for business trips down to California. He said he's been going through months of angst every time he goes through the security, and this was one of the final straws that sent him off, and he decided to protest. And he took off all of his clothes. And he stood there, and again, if you're able to watch the video, you're looking at the picture here. That's what the picture is. I'll go ahead and take that down for anyone who might be getting sick. It was censored in case you weren't watching. But so Brennan, this fellow, decided to take off his clothes in protest. And long story short, he was at the time accused and arrested of indecent exposure. Yesterday, here in Portland, Oregon, a Multnomah County prosecutor, a judge, Judge David Rees ruled that Brennan's nudity is an act of protected speech. Brennan said after the trial, quote, in some way or another, the court system works, and nudity is protected speech in Oregon. This is interesting. A prosecutor against Brennan said that if his actions are considered protected by the First Amendment, then anyone who is arrested while nude can also claim that their actions are a protest. But that's not necessarily the case according to the judge who made the ruling. Again, that's Judge David Rees. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. And basically what it comes down to is the law says that naked people are only breaking the law if they're having sex in public or getting undressed with, quote, the intent of arousal, the sexual desire of another person, end quote. When Brennan left the stand yesterday, he said that his protest was intended to give the TSA an idea of the effects its policies have on travelers, especially the body scanners that produce images of passengers without their clothes on. He said, what's the difference? I don't want a naked picture taken of me. I don't want a naked picture of me available out there. And he wanted to show the TSA that it's a two-way street. Well, Mr. John Brennan, I applaud you for standing up for your free speech rights, except now there is a naked picture of you out there floating around going viral on the internet. So I thought that was kind of cool, and I'm a big advocate.
Hey, good on him.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate of free speech. I think free speech is crucially important to our democracy, and
Not only that, the self-sacrifice he did in order to protest. I mean, are you willing to get naked in front of the TSA? I'm not, but hey, this guy obviously was to prove a point, and good on him. I'm not willing to do that. So it's just it's a good form of protest. It proves the sheer lunacy and the violation of your, at the very least, your Fourth Amendment rights going through the TSA. And so good, good on this guy.
Yeah, kind of taking a page out of the Rush Limbaugh book as he, uses this lame excuse to kind of justify all of his freaking absurd actions, but using absurdity to highlight absurdity. I thought that was kind of cool. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
So, nudity is free speech, at least here in the state of Oregon. And, for what that's worth, I thought that was kind of funny to share with you. Who doesn't like nudity first thing in the morning? And
I think what Jerry Seinfeld said, there's good naked and bad naked. That's bad naked right there.
Yes. Lots of other news, though, to get to, and we're going to spend a majority of this program. And again, big thanks to Nicole for letting us fill in here on the Nicole Sandler Show with you. We're going to get into the drought and climate change pretty extensively, but I want to touch on a couple of other stories first that are making news this morning and last night. I thought this was kind of significant. The Disclosure Act. Not sure if you're staying up on this as much as what's really going on here. Rep. Sander Levin, he's a Democrat from Michigan, says that he's working on legislation that would require any candidate for federal office, to disclose the identity and value of any offshore financial interest he or she may possess. That's the first part. Also, the Financial Disclosure to Reduce Tax Haven Abuse Act, which is the official name of it, the Disclosure Act, more or less, is what it's known as. The measure would also require candidates to release 10 years' worth of tax returns. And I think this is really significant. It's already got support. Senators Dick Durbin, Democrat from Illinois, Carl Levin, Democrat from Michigan, have both endorsed this. How crucial the timing of this when you have a candidate running for president right now, Mitt Romney, and the biggest thing circling Mitt Romney right now are two things: offshore financial assets that he may or may not possess, and his tax returns, releasing his tax returns. Hats off to Representative Sander Levin, the Democrat from Michigan, who is working on this legislation to really nail those 2 points down. Moving forward, I think that is crucial for electoral politics in this country. You should have to disclose the identity and value of any offshore financial assets if you're running for federal office. That is point blank, period. I think that's kind of a blatant admittance to being anti-American in some ways. And I know a lot of people are talking about, what does Mitt Romney want? What is Mitt Romney hiding here? That's a big kind of conversation topic. Oh, he's not disclosing anything. He doesn't want to release the tax forms. He doesn't want to talk about the offshoring and everything, these Cayman Island bank accounts, these things. He doesn't want to talk about it. What's Mitt Romney hiding? And, of course, everyone on the right is saying, oh, well, I really don't care about that. Let's focus on the bad things Obama's doing. Because here at the Romney headquarters, we don't have any plans. We don't have any ideas to move the country forward.
There's also a good article I just found on commondreams.org from Tuesday by Bill Moyers and his writing partner Michael Winship that points out just the lunacy of not having any kind of transparency in our elections. And I think one of the quotes on here, which is very apropos, is that the Declaration of Independence wasn't signed by anonymous. You know, those who sign the big check should have the very same courage of their convictions. But I think when you're doing something that's shady, you know, somewhat perhaps was once illegal, unfortunately no longer is illegal, then you have to cover up what you're doing. You know, it's only been retroactively made legal by Citizens United, and there's no transparency on top of that. So it's just it's a sad connotation to where we are in our democracy, unfortunately.
Absolutely. And Scott, thank you for mentioning Bill Moyers, one of my, personal heroes. Chris Hedges.
Oh, yeah, that guy does good journalism.
Chris Hedges, another one of my personal heroes, author, is going to be a guest on this weekend's episode of Moyers and Company. So I just want to put that little bug in your ears. He's going to be, Chris Hedges is going to be on with Bill Moyers talking about his new book, Days of Destruction, Days of Revolt, talking about these sacrifice zones, pockets of the country that have been completely trapped in endless kind of cycles of helplessness and despair. And it's really the effects of unfettered, unrestrained capitalism. But... before we dive too far down the rabbit hole here, check that out. And if you're interested, we kind of did a program on that on Filter Free Radio, our show this week, and you can check that out on our website, which is filterfreeradio.com. Other headlines kind of making news this morning that I kind of thought was interesting. Did you know that there is a bipartisan duo in the House right now joining together on a measure? And any time that there's bipartisan support, I'm kind of always intrigued right now with the extreme polar opposition here and the bipartisan fighting going on in this election season. But there is a bipartisan effort in the House right now on a measure that would prohibit the U.S. military from spending defense money on pro-sports sponsorships. I'm not. Yeah, exactly. Did that make your eyeballs or eyebrows?
I didn't know that was one of the ways they spent their money.
Exactly. We talk about defense spending, and this is obviously a huge elephant in the room that we really need to focus on and take care of.
60% of the discretionary budget.
And how many people know that a significant chunk of that defense spending is spent on pro sports sponsorships?
I did not know that.
How about $80 million worth?
Wow.
That's a big chunk of change. And Representatives Jack Kingston, he's a Republican from Georgia, and Betty McCollum, the Democrat from Minnesota, says that their plan will reach... which they're offering as an amendment to this year's defense appropriations bill. It would repeal $80 million worth of contracts with sports franchises that are aimed at promoting the armed forces. Are you not surprised to learn that taxpayers are spending $80 million this year to sponsor NASCAR and IndyCar racing teams, professional bass fishing, and ultimate fighting?
Wow. I mean, I've seen them. Obviously, they sponsor the NFL and the NBA and certainly Major League Baseball, but I wasn't aware of that, to how much the extent was. I mean, you say 80 million?
80 million. And again, this is a measure that's being worked on by the representative from Georgia, Jack Kingston, Republican, and representative from Minnesota, Democrat, Betty McCollum. Call their offices and tell them that, first of all, you're surprised to learn that taxpayers are spending $80 million to sponsor sports franchises to promote the armed forces, first of all. And second of all, good on you for trying to repeal it.
Wow. That's just insane. I mean, the interesting thing about that is what that says is that our military industrial complex needs to advertise to sports fans. And the question is why? Why would you need to advertise? I mean, what's the goal of this? I guess $80 million worth of advertisements. What's their goal in doing this? I don't have an answer for that, but it's just certainly a question worth asking.
There was a USA Today report back in May, a couple of months ago, which found that the National Guard spent $26.5 million to serve as a sponsor for NASCAR racing great Dale Earnhardt Jr., apparently. The sponsorship, however, failed to land any new recruits. Oh my goodness! That was kind of interesting. Other things going on in the news this morning. Speaker of the House John Boehner is accusing President Obama's effort to let income tax cuts expire for Americans earning upwards of $250,000 as a blatant disregard for the middle class. More bipartisan bickering. We've got about 10 minutes here before the bottom of the hour. We'll take a quick break and come back. But in the meantime, I want to dive into the drought, which is, in my opinion, the story of the day. And again, if you're just joining us here on the Nicole Sandler Show, coming up in the second hour, author, environmental activist Bill McKibben has a brand new article coming out in next month's Rolling Stone magazine. And I just read it yesterday, and it is crazy. It is crazy. There are 3 numbers that you need to know about climate change. And if we don't do something about it, we have 17 years before it's game over. And this is serious stuff. And Bill McKibben is going to drop by for a couple of minutes in the second hour of the program today here on the Nicole Sandler Show to tell us what the heck is going on. And even more importantly, what are we going to do about it? What can we do about it? Who is the real enemy here? And he, in the article, Bill talks about how reluctant he is to use the word enemy, but years and years and years of climate change activism has seemed to make minimal effects at best. And so he is this is kind of Bill McKibben's life struggle here is how do we do something about the warming of this planet and our atmosphere and our species. And honestly, I got to say, Bill McKibben's one of those guys who's doing God's work. And that's
God bless that guy.
He's
fighting a good fight, man.
That really is the case. So we'll get into that in the second hour. But this is the story of the hour. This is a big deal. The drought. Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack met with President Obama yesterday. And they discussed more or less the government's response to this ongoing drought right now. It's 29 states are currently affected, and it's increasing by the second. And matter of fact, I'll throw up a picture for those of us who are watching on the video. This is a picture of Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack in the press briefing room yesterday. And we'll play a couple of clips from him. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and hit one of those. We'll play a couple of them here. But this is a significant story, and it's not just the corn crop that's going to be affected here. It's not just the soybean crop that's going to be affected here. It's not just the livestock farmers who are going to be affected here. All of us are going to be affected. And, specifically, I want to focus on corn, because have you ever seen a documentary called King Corn? It is shocking.
You actually watched that movie, Jacob?
Yeah, we've watched it.
Awesome, dude. Love that movie.
And by the way, I have 8 corn facts that you're going to want to hear, too, when we come back. 8 shocking facts about corn that you may or may not know. But more or less, the kind of point to King Corn is everything is made of corn. food, livestock feedings, these things. You'd be shocked to know how much corn is used. It's the number one crop in the nation. It's very heavily subsidized, and we'll get into why all of that means something to you. And I'll give you a hint. It's because you eat food. If you don't eat food, then you won't be affected by this. But I have a feeling you might eat. Some of the headlines right now on the internet. USA Today. Drought expected to drive up cost of milk and cheese. Gawker. Record drought set to ruin America's pizza consumption. Reuters. Headline. U.S. drought wilts crops as officials pray for rain. Chicago Tribune headline. Police see lit cigarette as loaded weapon in statewide drought. Seriously.
Wow.
Washington Post headline. Drought having huge impact on river commerce. And, of course, Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack saying yesterday in the press briefing room that 61% of the nation is affected by this, and it is the worst drought in 25 years.
Did have an opportunity to visit with the president. He is very well informed on the circumstances surrounding a very serious drought, the most serious situation we've had probably in 25 years across the country. 61% of the landmass of the United States is currently being characterized as being impacted by this drought. And our hearts go out to the producers, the farm families who are struggling through something that they obviously have no control over and trying to deal with a very difficult circumstance.
Oppressive heat, this drought in the Midwest is really pushing grain prices up near and past records. Crops are wilting, cities are cooking, concerns are growing about food and fuel prices. And the reason why this is a big deal, we are the world's top food exporter.
Really?
Yeah, true story. Don't
we have people starving here in the United States?
Yeah, think about it.
I'm just wondering. I thought we got so much food we can export. How come everybody's not fat and happy? I mean,
yeah,
well, a good bit of us are fat, but you know what? You get my point.
Yeah, I do.
Huh.
I do get your point. And I mean, this is just food for thought here, pun intended. Soybean prices at the Chicago Board of Trade set a record high, and corn closed near a record as millions of acres of crops are searing in triple-digit heat in the Corn Belt. Cornfields have been plowed up in many locations for lack of rain, and now soybeans, which develop later than corn, are in the bullseye. I've got a couple of pictures to show you here if you're watching the video on this. Drought conditions are now extended for more than, as the Agriculture Secretary just said in the clip, 61% of the lower 48 states of the intact Union. Think about that. 61%. That's over half. It's almost 2/3. The government is working on extending drought aid to an additional 39 counties designated as primary natural disaster areas, bringing such aid to a total of 1,297 counties across 29 states. This is a big deal. This drought is expected to be felt worldwide as the world's biggest grain exporter struggles with these shortfalls. And did you know that the United States exports more than half of all world corn shipments? And we're the single top exporter of wheat and soy. Not looking good. Not looking
about that.
So, and again, there's a picture of a farmer looking at his corn crops, and they're just dead. They're dried out. They're wilted up. The ground, you can see the ground is hard and dry and cracking in some of these photos that are making their way across the internet. This is significant. I really think that this is a big deal, and I want to dive into this a little bit more when we come back here on the Nicole Sandler Show. It's so good to be with you on RadioOrNot.com, TalkRadio1.com, SoFloRadio.com, ProgressiveBlendRadio.com, We Act Radio, 1480 AM in Washington, D.C., YouTube, and our website, FilterFreeRadio.com. When we come back, we're going to dive more into this. We're going to talk about what the weather is looking like. And we've got some bad news also. Bill McKibben's going to be joining us in a few minutes next hour to talk about his new article in Rolling Stone about this exact stuff. Don't go anywhere. The Nicole Sandler Show on Radio or Not continues with Jacob Dean from Filter Free Radio.
Hi, friends. This is Tom Hartman.
This is Stephanie Miller.
Hey, this is Hal Sparks.
I'm Brad Friedman. I approve of Nicole Sandler's RadioOrNot.com.
Radio or Not.
Radio or Not.
RadioOrNot.com.
RadioOrNot.com.
RadioOrNot.com. RadioOrNot.com.
J.P. Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, and the other Wall Street behemoths that dominate American banking? Who needs them? After enduring years of insatiable greed by the slick-fingered hucksters who run these gambling houses, after watching in dismay as their ineptness and avarice drain more than $19 trillion from America's household wealth since 2007 and plunged our real economy into financial crisis, after seeing them get trillions of dollars in taxpayer bailouts to save their banks and their jobs, and now, after learning that they've returned to paying multi-million-dollar bonuses to themselves, we have to ask, huh? Oh, no, cry the banking titans. Don't even think of looking behind the curtain. Trust us, for we are essential to juicing the economy with our complex abracadabra investment schemes. In fact, however, those schemes just move money around, siphoning real investment capital from the grassroots up to super-rich global profiteers. Shell games at carnival sideshows are more honest than big bank trading houses, for the hustles of J.P. Morgan, Goldman, BOA, etc., are based on financial illusions, off-the-books accounting, illegally leveraged borrowing, ridiculous tax subsidies, and hide-the-pee secrecy. This is Jim Hightower saying, the obvious truth is that these high-flying, high-tech, high-speed emporiums of high finance serve themselves, not us. So we have no obligation or need to keep serving them. Of course we need banks to lend to us consumers in our productive businesses, to handle our commercial transactions, to manage our savings and provide financial advice, etc. But that's not what the leviathans of Wall Street do. So, rather than protecting them, let's decentralize America's capital, reinvesting our public trust in community banks and credit unions that actually serve it and deserve it.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
You never know who or what you'll hear when you listen to The Nicole Sandler Show at RadioOrNot.com.
Your view is not being represented in this country because all of our views have been corrupted by money and politics. Remember, 94% of the time, the candidate who raises the most money wins.
That's the fact that we need to drive home constantly. It's all about the money. Dylan Radigan, you rock.
The Nicole Sandler Show, live Monday through Thursdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, or podcast anytime at RadioOrNot.com.
And welcome back to the Nicole Sandler Show on RadioOrNot.com. My name is Jacob Dean, and it is a pleasure to be hanging out with you this morning. And for Nicole, Nicole's at the doctor's, all is well. And by the way, Nicole will be back tomorrow filling in for Randy Rhodes. So be sure to check out, again, Nicole in for Randy Rhodes tomorrow on all of Randy's beautiful affiliates nationwide, including AM 620 KPOJ right here in Portland. It is great to be with you this morning. my host of Filter Free Radio. We broadcast here on Monday nights on Nicole Sandler's Radio or Not Network. His name is Skeptical Scott, and Scott is here with me this morning holding down the fort for Nicole, and I hope it's some pretty big shoes to fill, so I hope we're doing okay. And again, Scott, thanks for getting up early, and because we don't normally go on the air until about 7 o'clock at night. Thanks for doing this with me, bud.
Yeah, man, I don't normally get up this early. This is, I'm only halfway through my first cup of coffee, so I'm sorry if I'm not exactly alert.
That's okay. I just spoke with Ellen Ratner from the Talk Radio News Service, and she wanted to let me know that she's going to be touching base with us here in about half an hour at the top of the hour coming up to give us a nice report of all the news going on in our nation's capital.
Excellent. And what time we have Bill McKibben on?
And again, Bill McKibben, the author and activist, is going to be joining us in the second hour on his new article in Rolling Stone, which isn't even out yet. It comes out next month. The title of the article, as you can see on your screen if you're watching the video, Global Warming's Terrifying New Math by Bill McKibben. I read the article. It's kind of lengthy. I read it yesterday, and basically Bill is saying there are three numbers here that we really need to focus on. Three important numbers. We have about 17 years to really make a difference. After that, it's game over. And we have more or less one significant target that we need to focus on. And I'm not going to say any more than that because I want Bill to be able to share his story with you. And then we'll dive into his article to kind of finish off the show here. So, yeah, sounds good. Right now, before we get back into the drought news, this is kind of cool. I had a couple of facts about corn here in America that I wanted to share with you. I have 8. I boiled it down to 8. No pun intended. Some of these you may know, some of these you may not know. I want to direct your attention to a brilliant documentary movie made a few years ago called King Corn. And,
2007.
2007. Thank you, Scott. It is a must-watch. Also, Food Inc., for that matter. But I suggest you don't eat before you watch either of those movies because it's a little dose of reality, a wake-up check, kind of slap in the face. It's like here we are, one of the things that we are most intimate with, something that we do at least 2 or 3 times a day. Some of us, now granted, in dire circumstances with hard times, may not be eating right now, but a majority of us who are eating might not realize where that food comes from, or what is in that food, or is my breakfast cereal and fruit and these things actually come from corn somehow? Yes, it does. Watch King Corn. It's fascinating.
Where'd you find that, Jacob? Was that on Netflix?
Yeah, it is on Netflix. And so if you have Netflix, you can get it there. And I'm sure, Redbox or all these other jazz, or find it online. I think the website's kingcorn.com. I could be wrong about that. Here are 8 facts about corn that you may or may not know. Number 1, corn is found in 3 out of 4 supermarket products. Let me say that again. Corn is in 3 out of 4 supermarket products. Corn makes up 75% of the supermarket. Seriously. There are more than...
It's in everything.
There are more than 3,500 different uses for corn products. The corn fact number 2. The average American spends about $267 a year on corn products. That's a lot of money. A year on corn. That's because everything is made of corn. And now that we have the worst drought in 25 years, this is going to significantly impact us and affect us. Americans, number 3, Americans consume 1/3 of all corn produced in the world. Number 4, U.S. corn crops acreage, all put together collectively, would cover the entire country of Germany. Number 5.
Wow.
Average corn yields have increased 500% since 1931.
Interesting. Do you know why that is?
No, I don't.
There's numerous reasons, but good.
Subsidies. I would imagine subsidies.
Subsidies are part of it. Also, genetically modified corn. I believe that, because I watched this movie a few years ago, and I love this movie, and it's worth noting that the only time I visit my parents, they have Netflix and I don't, and I sit there when they go to bed at night and watch 2 or 3 documentaries on Netflix. And so King Corn was one of the ones that just really resonated with me, and the imagery in that movie is just stunning because I believe 100% of the corn, or at least 90%, I know of, almost all, I should say, of the corn in the United States is genetically modified. There is no more non-genetically modified corn. And so not only is it all genetically modified, but it's in everything we eat. Corn subsidies are astounding. I mean, if you saw that movie, the silos, they showed a picture of, or the image of the silos full of corn. They said, oh, over here are the 6 silos in town that we bring our corn to, and they store our corn before shipping. And then next to the silos was just 3 pits, or 3 giant mounds of corn that were like 10 times the size of the silos themselves. And that's how much surplus of corn they had. And this is back in 2006 or 7 when they filmed this. And it just sits there. And because the thing is, it doesn't go bad. The brand of corn that we all eat now is Yellow Dent number 24, which I don't know if it's a Monsanto product or who genetically engineered this corn that we all eat. But that's the number for it. And so it doesn't go bad. And it sits there, in this giant mounds in the middle of, in the middle of Iowa or wherever they're growing it. Just going to be shipped out gradually over the year. And then everything is then, at that point manipulated into whatever you eat. It could be anything from Cheez-Its to popcorn to whatever. But it's in everything. And it's quite fascinating to see how much it pervades, I guess, in our diet. You almost can't avoid it.
Yeah, you betcha. Corn fact number 6. You mentioned subsidies, Scott. Corn subsidies in the United States have totaled $81.7 billion, with a B, billion, almost $82 billion from 1995 until 2011.
Yeah, and the thing about, I'm sorry to cut you off, dude.
No.
But I'm like, all the imagery and what I learned from this movie is coming rushing back as you talk about it. And I know that the premise of the movie was these 2 kids just grew an acre of corn just to see how much it cost and how it, and track it from seed to a time it goes to market, just to see, how we grow our corn, et cetera. And in the end, not to spoil the movie for you, but in the end, they would have lost money if it wasn't for government subsidies, because there is such a massive corn surplus that the price of corn is so low that the only way to actually make any money growing corn is through the government subsidies. And so therefore, if we were to do so-called free market, if you will, there wouldn't be nearly as much corn because there's no need for it.
Let's wrap up these corny facts really quick, and then sorry, and then I want to play a couple more clips from our Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack about this. And the first clip, you'll see why. The last 2, in the United States, it takes 91 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of corn. And also,
wow.
And finally, the last one, and I thought this is most significant because this is where your high fructose corn syrup comes into play. Consumption of corn sweetener in the United States has increased 387% since 1970.
How much?
387%.
In the last 40 years?
Yeah, 40 years, more or less.
And that's just corn syrup. That's not corn itself.
That's corn sweetener.
Sweetener, I'm sorry.
That's just corn sweetener. And
all right.
Okay, Jacob, I am tired of all of these corny facts. Why is this significant? It's significant because, well, I'll let our Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack mention to you, as he did to the press briefing room yesterday in the White House.
There's no question that this drought is having an impact on our crops. 78% of the corn crop is now in an area designated as drought impacted. 77% of the soybeans that are being grown in this country also impacted. It also obviously involves other commodities as well. 38% of our corn crop as of today is rated poor to very poor. 30% of our soybeans poor to very poor.
Okay, so just to touch on those numbers, go back to our corny facts. The first one, 75% of everything in the supermarket contains corn. What did the Agriculture Secretary just say? About 70 or more percent of the corn crop is affected, and currently about 30 or more percent is labeled poor or very poor condition. I loved math in school. It was one of my favorite subjects, but you don't need to love math to put that 2 and 2 together. We are facing a significant crisis. And this is all because of climate change. And again, we're going to dive into in depth into Bill McKibben's new article in the next hour, and also we'll read to you from Derrick Jensen's A New Declaration, which was published a couple of months ago. But it's so important to get that message out. I've got a couple more clips that I want to play from the Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack from yesterday's press briefing. This is important. And again, the reason why I'm talking about this is because more or less, generally speaking, we all eat food. I don't like this. I don't like to speak.
You mean corn? Don't we more or less all eat corn?
I don't like to speak in generalities, but I think I can safely say that a majority of people eat food. And if 75% of everything in the supermarket is made from corn or has corn in it, and 70% of the corn crop in the country is going to be affected by this drought, then that means, as the Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack says right here, food prices are going to go up.
The question that a lot of folks are asking is, what will the impact be on food prices? Because livestock producers will begin the process of potentially reducing their herds in light of higher feed costs, we would anticipate in the short term, food prices for beef, poultry, pork may go down a bit, but over time they will rise. We will probably see those higher prices later this year, first part of next year.
I thought that was kind of interesting. He's like, yeah, temporarily might go down a little bit, so don't get too, that was his, don't get too excited, but yeah, it's going to go up. And not only the price of food that's going to go up, but the Agriculture Secretary Vilsack touched on the fact that the ones that are really going to get hurt aren't necessarily the corn farmers, because they have crop insurance. And there is another type of farmer that doesn't have insurance that will be just as affected or more affected by this. And I want to share this with you as well.
Crop producers have the ability to utilize crop insurance, and for the most part, crop insurance will provide historically about 72% coverage of yields and revenue loss. But it's the livestock producers that are in the biggest and most troubled situation, because they simply don't have any disaster program, and there's no such thing as a crop insurance program for livestock producers.
Yeah, you get that? I mean, I know many of you out there may be vegetarian, vegan. Tip of the hat to you. Good on you. That is a significant life choice and decision to make for the better, to be part of the ultimate solution here. But for those of us who enjoy a steak or a burger once in a while, or, grilled chicken, occasionally once in a while, your hamburger may be going up in price. Say goodbye to the dollar menu. I don't know. Last but not least, this is the last clip that I have from the Agriculture Secretary, kind of wrapping it up here. What do we need to happen here? I mean, we've got this drought. We can't really control the weather. We can't make it rain. Our actions do, however, affect the weather. Again, we'll be talking about climate change for the next hour. But what we really need right now is one body of government, one of the three branches of government, arguably the most inactive branch of government at the moment, the Congress, the legislative branch, to get active and do something about it. Here is Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack again.
Obviously, this drought will provide some degree of uncertainty, but the most important thing is for Congress to take action to provide some direction and assistance so that folks know what's going to happen, what kind of protection they're going to have. That certainty is really important, and that's whether they want to get to work on the Food, Farm, and Jobs bill, they want to develop a separate disaster program or an extension of existing programs, whatever it might be. Having that done as soon as possible will be quite helpful.
And if we're going to make, or if Congress is going to make any action on this, it's going to require you and me to make them do it. Just as, with any issue or action or, movement, it is up to us to engage in the process and get active and make change happen. Call your representative, call your senators, call your local officials, and say, hey, can we get the ball rolling here? Agriculture Secretary says Congress needs to act. We've got the worst drought in 25 years. 75% of the corn crop will be affected. Right now, over 30% is in poor or very poor condition. Corn makes up 75% of everything in the supermarket. It's like not rocket science. Okay.
Wow.
So
it's like one of the harbingers. I guess I've been told for years now that food will soon become there will be a food shortage because the environmental crisis is intimately linked to the economic crisis, and so soon food will become a scarce commodity, and it's happening sooner than I thought. So joy.
Well, Scott, you and I talk about on our show on Filter Free Radio all the time that. And I'm of the opinion that I think the next major epidemic as far as human species is concerned is simply food and water. And clean air. I mean, all the basic tenets of life. Right.
So yeah, it's become quite the commodity. I mean, let's face it, quality. You're more likely to eat corn products. The poorer you are, more. Or I wouldn't say the volume. I guess we're all going to eat it somehow. But the volume in which you consume corn products is based on your income level, because let's face it, cheap, bad food is all corn based.
Yep.
It's just the cheaper you go, the more it is just some sort of reconfiguration of corn. It's not good for you. It's not even remotely nutritious. So
we're going to check in with the Talk Radio News Service, get the latest news from Washington and the happenings going around the world here, and coming up in just about 5 minutes or so. In the meantime, let me read through real quick these headlines again about the droughts, and then I want to real quickly do a really short bit about I think the new Batman movie is going to influence the upcoming elections. I'll tell you why. But real quick, these are some of the headlines going around the internet right now about the drought. Again, from Washington Post, drought having huge impact on river commerce. Headline from the Chicago Tribune, police see lit cigarette as loaded weapon in statewide drought. Headline from Reuters, U.S. drought wilts crops as officials pray for rain. Gawker, headline, record drought set to ruin America's pizza consumption. USA Today headline, drought expected to drive up cost of milk and cheese. And the only good news from this whole thing, the only thing that I can find that is of any significance or any good positive, the glass is half full. I'm a glass is always half full kind of guy. There's one headline here that is good news about the drought. From the Huffington Post. United States drought 2012. The silver lining? Lot fewer mosquitoes. So. Oh, that's...
I have noticed that about my backyard. My backyard's like a swamp, and I haven't gotten chewed up this much this year.
That's not, I'm sorry, that's not necessarily laughing matter, but I thought that was kind of funny.
Well, there's always a silver lining.
Yeah, you gotta find, and that's how we get through these really kind of depressing times, is you have to find the silver lining in everything. You have to find the good, find the positive, focus and think, positively, and, find your motivation from those good sources, and you will find purpose. That is more or less how it works. We've got 5 minutes before we check in with the Talk Radio News Service here on the Nicole Sandler Show, and I want to do a quick story because this is kind of funny. Do you think that possibly that the new Batman movie could influence the upcoming presidential election? You have any thought on that, Scott?
I don't know. How is that going to how would it possibly do that?
Let me play, and Nicole was talking about this yesterday, I believe, and she didn't want to get into it because I think her exact words were, Rush is so, quote, fucking absurd. I think I can say that. But we are on Radio or Not, right? And I do...
Well, we're not going to be on terrestrial radio later?
And I do... I'll edit it out. And I'll do a... and I do a show called Filter Free Radio, so, I try to be as unfiltered as possible. But Rush Limbaugh was squawking about this yesterday, or day before yesterday, and then he had to walk it back. And the scary thing is I kind of sort of agree with Rush Limbaugh for the first time, I think, in the history of time. I think he's right about something. And let me play this clip for you.
The villain in The Dark Knight Rises is named Bane. What is the name of the venture capital firm that Romney ran and around which there's now this make-believe controversy? Bane.
I'm showing, for those of us who are watching the video, the picture of the new villain from the Batman movie. And his name is Bane. Kind of interesting, Jon Stewart points out.
We've been gone for about 2 weeks. I can't give you a recap of all the that happened over the past day. Every major story of interest, but I can tell you this. In what can only be called a bit of divine intervention, the hot political story of the moment is Mitt Romney's old venture capital company, which happens to bear the same name as the most frightening and current Batman villain.
This is true. And Jon Stewart, who I love, was ripping on it on the Daily Show, and Rush had to go run his mouth and squawk about it. And this is hilarious.
The movie has been in the works for a long time. The release date's been known, summer 2012, for a long time. Do you think that it is accidental that the name of the really vicious, fire-breathing, four-eyed, whatever it is, villain in this movie is named Bane?
Rush? No. Absolutely not. And this is the last clip I have. I don't want to, pain you with any more of this trash, but let me wrap up this with the last clip here and tell you why I think he's kind of right.
And there's now discussion out there as to whether or not this was purposeful and whether or not it'll influence voters. It's going to have a lot of people. Audience going to be huge. A lot of people are going to see the movie. And it's a lot of brain-dead people, entertainment, the pop culture crowd, and they're going to hear Bane in the movie, and they're going to associate Bane, and the thought is that when they start paying attention to the campaign later in the year, and Obama, the Democrats keep talking about Bane, not Bane Capital, but Bane, Romney, and Bane, that these people will think back to the Batman movie. Oh, yeah, I know who that is.
I think he's right. I think he is right about that. And one more clip here from Jon Stewart. I probably laughed for about 3 minutes straight when they did this on the Daily Show this week. I think it was on Monday when he did this. He played this. This is so funny. Jon Stewart set up this clip, and then they cut to a screenshot of what I'm showing you on the camera right here. A picture of the new villain from the new Batman movie named Bane, and then Jon Stewart played this clip.
Bane!
What are you? Corporations are people, my friend.
It was too funny. It was too funny. It was too funny. I love Jon Stewart. I absolutely.
Oh, it was brilliant. Last night I watched it. I know you haven't watched it yet, but it was he did a thing on the LIBOR last night, and he did probably one of the best jobs I've heard of explaining the LIBOR and then linking it to our current U.S. Economic crisis. It was just brilliant and funny for how dramatically sad it was. So the best thing about Jon Stewart is he's able to boil down things and present it to us with humor, things that are otherwise generally overwhelming and dark and things we don't want to deal with. So, I love Jon Stewart. He is our court jester.
Yes.
And he's great.
Yes. And I mean, one of the things that's so important about that, Scott, is you're able to, or Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert are able to communicate and get really important, prevalent facts and information across and use humor to do it, How crucial is that?
That's the thing. That's the I believe our buddy Shano taught me a good quote from and now I'm drawing a blank of who it was, but the point was that if you don't, if you tell somebody bad news or something they don't want to hear and you don't do it with humor, they'll kill you. And I believe that was I can't remember the name of that person's quote.
Okay.
But
Hey! Oh, and real quick, let's go ahead and fire off our little news jingle here for Ellen Ratner.
I read the news today, oh boy.
Ellen Ratner from the Talk Radio News Service to give us an update on what's going on in the world. Ellen, it's a pleasure to speak with you.
My cute little Jacob, how are you?
Oh, doing well here in soggy, rainy, and hopefully not necessarily Fukushima, Portland. But how's things in the nation's capital?
Well, the things in the nation's capital are pretty good. The president is off doing campaigning in Florida. Interesting, the Boston Globe today thinks that the candidate for VP is going to be Rob Portman from Ohio. I should say the great state of Ohio, since I'm from Ohio.
Of course.
I don't see it. It is true that Rob ran against my junior high school friend Lee Fisher and won, and so they think that he can win Ohio. But a lot has changed in Ohio. They have Governor Kasich, and Kasich is not done a great job with the great state of Ohio.
Yeah, former Fox contributor there, Kasich, and right now, kind of a lot of speculation. There's a lot of names being thrown around. Rob Portman, Tim Pawlenty, Bobby Jindal. It sounds like Marco Rubio's kind of out of it, and
I still, we have an office pool. You're welcome to join it. Of course, Jeff hasn't given us his choices yet. But, and neither is Victoria. Victoria, who do you think is going to be the vice presidential nominee?
Portman or Jindal?
Portman or Jindal, and I am going with Rubio or Pawlenty.
You're so wrong.
Okay.
Now you're hearing the debate.
Rubio is so dumb.
I guess the real question here is how much will that affect the vote?
Well, there's a poll that says who he selects as vice president is going to affect this quite a bit. I'm not so sure, but you certainly don't want somebody running for vice president who at the vice presidential debate gets completely creamed by the current vice president.
Sure.
And this vice president has had not only 4 years experience as a vice president, but he'll have had much more experience, of course, as a senator. So we'll see what happens.
Anything's got to be better than Sarah Palin.
Yeah, and that's exactly why one of my New Hampshire hosts thinks that their female senator, well, I guess they've got two female senators, Kelly, I can never pronounce her name, is going to be their nominee because Romney is making a statement before he goes to the Olympics in New Hampshire. I just don't see it.
Okay.
I'm telling you, I'm still going with Rubio. Everybody thinks I'm crazy.
Okay.
Jeff, how come you haven't given your ideas?
Benny Martinez.
He says Benny Martinez. That's how wacko Jeff is. See what I have to put up with, Jacob?
I would vote for Benny for VP. There you go.
Right. Okay. So, other things happening. The Senate is dealing with a bill that I don't know that they're going to get the 60 votes necessary for cloture. The House is, and that's a jobs bill. The House is working on the Defense Authorization Act. And yesterday it came out that the Pentagon is spending $80 million to support sports events, including like $26 million for.
That amendment went down.
The amount went down? What's it down to? Oh, the amendment went down.
Voted down last night.
So what does it mean? That we still are spending that money?
Yes.
We're still spending that money, my friend.
We mentioned, we were talking about that earlier, Ellen, in the show. I'm curious how many people out there would be surprised to know that taxpayers are funding to the tune of $80 million in defense spending to sponsor NASCAR and bass fishing and ultimate fighting, with all the point to be promoting the armed forces. What's up with that?
Well, obviously if it's going to help recruiting, fine, but they're meeting their recruiting goals very easily.
Right.
It's the economy and et cetera. They're meeting their recruiting goals. I don't understand why we're spending the money. I'd rather spend it for school loans.
Amen. Amen, Alan.
So, what else can I tell you about this morning, my friend?
Well, we've been really kind of diving into the drought and climate change, and we played a couple clips from the Secretary of Agriculture.
29 states in real trouble on drought. And the fascinating part about the drought issue is that you have people who are getting crop insurance, for their crops failing. However, if their crops are used to feed livestock, they don't have crop insurance, so there's no livestock insurance. So if you have a bunch of cows or pigs or something like that, you are up a creek.
Yeah, and as long as the creek hasn't dried up yet. It's not good. We played a couple of clips from Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack, and almost 2/3 of the entire nation is being hit by this. And he said yesterday in I'm sure that in the press briefing room, it's the most serious situation, drought, in over 25 years. It's a big deal. It is a big deal. And I don't like to speak in generalities, but I have a feeling that most people eat food. And if you eat food, ultimately we're going to be affected by this from higher prices of everything. It's scary.
It's much higher prices, that's right. So you not only have the vegans and the veggies that are affected by this, but you will clearly have the carnivores affected by this. And for families who have high gas prices, who are on unemployment, who don't have jobs, this is just an impossible situation.
Ellen, is there any updates on the Disclosure Act, which I think is so important right now when you have a candidate running for president, Mitt Romney, who has the big thing right now is his offshore Cayman Islands bank accounts and the fact that he won't release any of his tax returns. Is there anything going on with the Disclosure Act?
No, it failed in the Senate, and as I said yesterday, it's the Go Nowhere Disclosure Act, because it was clearly going nowhere and it went nowhere. Nice gesture, makes some press, gets some headlines, keeps people happy back home, but they have no interest in that. You and I know, money runs this country, money runs elections, and that's the story.
Ellen Ratner from the Talk Radio News Service, talkradionews.com, and Goats for the oldgoat.com. Ellen, it's a pleasure speaking with you.
I love talking to you, Mr. Jacob. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. We'll talk to you soon. Keep up the great work there in our nation's capital. Ellen Ratner from the Talk Radio News Service. Again, check out the website, talkradionews.com. Follow them on Twitter for excellent updates, and sign up for their newsletter. They email out a daily newsletter with clips and articles and all that good jazz. It's good stuff, really good stuff to get into. Keep you informed, keep you up to date, and Ellen and the folks at the Talk Radio News Service are some of the best people that can do it. I'm Jacob Dean, filling in for Nicole Sandler here on The Nicole Sandler Show, radioornot.com, talkradio1.com, soflowradio.com, progressiveblendradio.com, We Act Radio, 1480 AM in Washington, D.C., YouTube, podcasters, and everyone else galore. It is so great to be with you. We're going to take a really quick break, and we'll be right back with more climate change and Bill McKibben coming up in just a few minutes. Don't go anywhere. It's the Nicole Sandler Show on Radio or Not.
This is the Media Matters Minute. I'm Salvatore Calalori. Fox News has been on overdrive distorting comments President Obama made at a campaign appearance in Virginia and are accusing him of expressing hostility towards business. Let's listen.
The man is a statist. The man, I get in a lot of trouble for calling him a socialist. His policies are socialist.
It's not going to be enough for this president, who I think has an attitude of almost bordering on contempt for successful businessmen.
Yeah. To say you build a business, you didn't build it. I mean, whatever it is, you can't take credit for it. You didn't make it successful. Is a mistake. It is the makings of an ad.
Media Matters found that there have been 42 segments like these, totaling over 2 hours of airtime in just 2 days. And these segments are ignoring or downplaying what else Obama said, that public infrastructure helps create a community that supports business. For this story and more, visit MediaMatters.org.
The More Me Show with DJ Downtown and Eddie Herradura, live from our nation's capital, every Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern, with hilariously scathing inches from the Beltway analysis of this week's political and social developments. The More Me Show at ProgressiveBlendRadio.com and RadioOrNot.com.
Come experience the next generation of progressive voices, weekday nights on Nicole Sandler's primetime lineup at RadioOrNot.com. Liberate yourself with filter-free radio, hosted by Jacob Dean every Monday night.
It's just the system is broken. Bring it down. Bring it all down, right?
On Wednesday nights, take a sharp progressive turn and join Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
All those Republicans are anti-capitalist.
All of a sudden, well, no, they're just anti-Romney.
Exactly.
and it's interesting to watch the three-legged stool splinter.
Then let it all hang out both Tuesday and Friday nights on Turn Up the Night with Kenny Pick.
You love the Constitution so much, but you hate the government, but you love the corporations. Where does that come from?
Tune in to the primetime Radio or Not lineup weekday nights at the Ustream home of Nicole Sandler, radioornot.com.
I'm sorry, I just find the whole thing so ironic and so mind-bending, it's just ridiculous.
Progressives across the country are taking action, from Madison, Wisconsin to the Occupy movement. And now, Washington, D.C.'s newest talk radio station, We Act Radio. In this election year, Progressive Talk returns to our nation's capital. We Act Radio is proud to showcase the biggest names in Progressive Talk Radio, including Stephanie Miller, Tom Hartman, Bill Press, Ed Schultz, Sam Cedar, and original live shows from our Anacostia studios. Take Action News with David Schuster, Speak Easy with Kamon Freeman and Ron Pinchback, and The Inside Scoop with Mark Levine. Available on your radio dial and on the web at weactradio.com. That's We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM in Washington, D.C. Truth is our product.
Yes, we can.
And welcome back to the Nicole Sandler Show on RadioOrNot.com. My name is Jacob Dean, filling in for Nicole, who's at a doctor's appointment this morning. Nicole will be in for Randy Rhoads tomorrow, so be sure to check out Nicole Sandler, who is the fine, phenomenal host here on Radio or Not of the Nicole Sandler Show. She's filling in for Randy Rhoads tomorrow. Check it out. And I host a show here on Radio or Not on Monday nights called Filter Free Radio. If you have any questions for me, or you'd like to know more about me or the show that Scott and I host, as Scott's here with us, check out our website, filterfreeradio.com. And and it's good stuff. Good progressive conversation, which is important because one of my opinions, in my opinion, the folks in the media who have the biggest megaphones are the ones that we need to hear the least. So do what you can to find your independent media, unfiltered, these kinds of things. Scott, thanks so much for hanging in there with us, buddy, and getting up early on the...
Hey, man, I'm happy to be here. This is exciting.
It is exciting. It's an honor and a privilege to be here in for Nicole, and you can... come chat. I finally got into the chat room here, so come
Look
say.
at you multitasking.
Come say hi. Trying to. And
That's right. I told everybody it's too much, man. You're producing, talking. It's hard to type, talk, and produce all at the same time. But hey, Nicole does it, so you should learn, buddy. Don't be a slacker.
Exactly. Nicole does a damn good job, and so
yeah, it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. Coming up in just a couple of minutes, here in about 15 minutes, the author of a new article coming out in next month's Rolling Stone magazine, Bill McKibben, he's an author, activist, environmentalist, is going to stop by for a couple of minutes and tell us the 3 important numbers that we need to know about for climate change, why we only have 17 years to do something about it, and who is, for lack of a better term, the enemy. Who do we need to be focusing on? What particular industry should we be worried about? I want to read to you a little bit from a brilliant article written by Derrick Jensen called A New Declaration. It was originally published in February of 2012, just a couple of months ago, 5 months ago, on occupiedmedia.us, OCCUPIED, occupiedmedia.us. And other show hosts have gone through this. I want to go through this article right before we get Bill McKibben on to kind of talk about climate change and what's going on, and then we'll continue to talk about the Rolling Stone article to wrap up the show here. But this is so well written that I have to share this with you. A New Declaration by Derrick Jensen. He starts off, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that the real physical world is the source of our own lives and the lives of others. A weakened planet is less capable of supporting life, human or otherwise." It's kind of a, these are all, what's the word I'm lacking?
Obvious truths.
Yes, we hold these truths.
Things we take for granted. I mean,
yes.
Air, water, and everything.
We hold these truths to be self-evident. And Scott, feel free to jump in here and comment as we go through this article, as you will.
Sure.
He continues, "Thus, the health of the real world is primary, more important than any social or economic system, because all social or economic systems are dependent upon a living planet," right? "It is self-evident that to value a social system that harms the planet's capacity to support life over life itself is to be out of touch with physical reality." This is a reality check here. It's a wake-up call. "We hold these truths to be self-evident that any way of life based on the use of non-renewable resources is by definition not sustainable." Fossil fuel industry, Bill McKibben coming up in 10 minutes. "We hold these truths to be self-evident that any way of life based on the hyper-exploitation of renewable resources is by definition not sustainable. If, for example, fewer salmon return every year, then eventually there will be no salmon left. This means that for a way of life to be sustainable, it must not harm native communities, native prairies, native forests, native fisheries, and so on. The real world is interdependent, such that harm done to rivers harms those humans and non-humans whose lives depend on these rivers, harms forests and prairies and wetlands surrounding these rivers. It harms the oceans into which these rivers flow. Harm done to mountains harms the rivers flowing through them. Harm done to oceans harms everyone directly or indirectly connected to them. Gulf of Mexico, BP, Fukushima, ring a bell?
And now we're drilling in the Arctic. Let's not forget. So hey, it's important to remember too. I think that the point of this article, at least one of the things I took out of it, was just the disconnect we as human beings have from the natural world. I mean, we are animals, and we're all interconnected on this planet. I mean, at the very least, from the air, water, etc. And so, in order to be good stewards of our own environment, I think the point to learn is that we're poisoning and killing ourselves at what is initially a slow rate, but now seems to be quite a rapid and alarming rate in which we are killing ourselves, literally killing ourselves. I mean, it's not a question of whether we're going to kill the planet. The planet will still be here. It's just that we won't be on it because it won't sustain human life.
Right.
So it's really important to, at the very least, if you care about nothing else, I think we should care about our own survival, and in doing that, that means restoring the planet to be livable for our species.
That's a point of brilliant messaging, Scott. If you get into a conversation with a friend or family member who may be Republican or conservative or whoever, or maybe they're in the middle of the road and they are just uninformed,
or they just like fossil fuels and car engines. I mean, it's
if they don't care about the fact that we're killing the planet, which is arguable. Bill McKibben's going to come on in a couple minutes to talk to us about that. Tell them that if you don't care that we're killing the planet, maybe you would care that we're killing ourselves, because we need the planet to survive.
Clean drinking water, air. I mean, it's all real basic and remedial, but it's also going away rapidly. And then now we're going to have food shortages to start with. So if we can't feed ourselves, I mean... Anyway.
Back to Derrick Jensen here. We hold these truths to be self-evident that you cannot argue with physics. If you burn carbon-based fuels, this carbon will go into the air and it will have effects in the real world. Creating and releasing poisons into the world will poison humans and non-humans. No one, no matter how rich or powerful, should be allowed to create poisons for which there is no antidote. The Koch brothers, for example, the second richest people in the country, the Koch brothers, make all their money in carbon industry. And I saw a thing on Facebook the other day, a quote from, I think, David or Charles Koch. I can't remember which one of it was, but it was words to the effect that if we try to regulate carbon, it will ruin the economy. No, sir, it will not ruin the economy. It will ruin your particular profits, which is why you are particularly upset about this particular issue, which affects all of us, and we are all fighting against you on it because we don't have any money in this game. What we have in this game is our lives. We like living, living, breathing, kind of important. We hold these truths to be self-evident that no one, no matter how rich or powerful, should be allowed to create messes that cannot be cleaned up. No one, no matter how rich or powerful, should be allowed to destroy places humans or non-humans need to survive. No one, no matter how rich or powerful, should be allowed to drive human cultures or non-human species extinct. That reality trumps all belief systems. What you believe is not nearly so important as what is real. We hold these truths to be self-evident that on a finite planet, you cannot have an economy based on or requiring growth. At least you cannot have one and expect to either have a planet or a future. You can have one or the other, but you can't have both. That the current way of life is not sustainable and will collapse. The only real questions are what will be left of the world after that collapse, and how bad will things be for humans and non-humans who come after. We hold it as self-evident that we should do all that we can to make sure that as much of the real physical world remains intact until the collapse of the current system, and that humans and non-humans should be as prepared as possible for this collapse. It's like if you try to hide from your past or you try to forget your past, it doesn't make it go away. Or, if you try to hide from reality, if you try to ignore reality, if you, tune out of reality, it doesn't change the fact that reality is still real. I think the point here is, like a couple sentences ago, what you believe is not as important as what is real. Wake up call. It's time for us to wake up and get active. And again, Bill McKibben coming up here in about 5 minutes is going to tell us why these new climate change numbers may spark a real significant movement. Because if it doesn't spark a real significant movement and we all don't get involved and make change happen because we, the people, demand it, we've got about 17.8 years left, and then it's game over. So, it's either now or never, guys. Back to Derrick Jensen. This is an article, if you're just joining us, that was originally published in occupiedmedia.us. It's called A New Declaration, and it's, again, my pleasure to share this with you on the Nicole Sandler Show here. Derrick Jensen continues, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that the health of local economies are more important than the health of a global economy, that a global economy should not be allowed to harm local economies or land bases. Corporations are not living beings. They are certainly not human beings. We hold these truths to be self-evident that corporations do not in any real sense exist. They are legal fictions. Limited liability corporations are institutions created explicitly to separate human beings from the effects of their actions, making them, by definition, inhuman and inhumane. Not responsible.
Right.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's right there. It's right there in the title, limited liability. I mean, how more obvious can you be? It says if I can do whatever I want and it won't affect me, it'll affect the company.
He continues, to the degree that we desire to live in a human and humane world, and really to the degree that we really wish to survive, limited liability corporations need to be eliminated, or at the very least reconstructed so that their sole purpose is for the common good. Derrick Jensen continues, and there's only a little bit left here, and then we're going to get Bill McKibben on. We hold these truths to be self-evident that the health of human and non-human communities is more important than the profits of corporations. We hold it as self-evident that the Declaration of Independent States, quote, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. End quote. Further, we hold it as self-evident that it would be more precise to say that it is not the right of the people, nor even their responsibility, but instead something more like breathing, something that if we fail to do, we will die. If we, as a people, fail to rid our communities of destructive institutions, those institutions will destroy our communities. And if we in our communities cannot provide meaningful and non-destructive ways for people to gain food, clothing, and shelter, then we must recognize it is not just specific destructive institutions, but the entire economic system that is pushing the natural world past its breaking points. Capitalism is killing the planet. Industrial civilization is killing the planet. And he wraps up the article by saying, once we've recognized the destructiveness of capitalism and industrial civilization, both of which are based on systematically converting a living planet into dead commodities, we've no choice, unless we wish to sign our own and our children's death warrants, but to fight for all we're worth and in every way we can to overturn it. A New Declaration by Derrick Jensen, originally published a couple of months ago on theoccupiedmedia.us. Hang around on the Nicole Sandler Show. We're going to take a really quick 2-minute break. We're going to get Bill McKibben on to talk about his new article in Rolling Stone on climate change, and we're going to tie all this together and tell us what you and I need to do to get active and save our planet. Don't go anywhere. Jacob Dean in for Nicole Sandler on Radio or Not. We will be right back.
You never know who or what you'll hear when you listen to the Nicole Sandler Show at radioornot.com.
Bill Maher, you're here in Miami on Friday night. You're doing a show at the Fillmore at the Jackie Gleason Theater. They just renamed this theater the Fillmore. And they put up a couple of psychedelic posters. So I guess...
Is it the theater Jackie did his TV show from?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
What I hear they did is put up 2 of those old Bill Graham posters and renamed it.
Yeah, I can't think of 2 different icons of show business.
Yeah, really.
Bill Graham and Jackie Gleason.
Yeah, why they just didn't play up the Jackie Gleason aspect, I don't know. But then again, this is South Florida.
Right. Okay.
Welcome to it.
I feel warned.
The Nicole Sandler Show, live Monday through Thursdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, or podcast anytime at radioornot.com.
Hi, this is Kenny Pick from Turn Up the Night. Here are some of the hijinks you can expect from my show. We just got done listening to several clips about the Romney fundraisers over the weekend, and I invented the murder finger. It's an offspring of the murder fist. It just happens to be the murder fist with the middle finger extended.
Well, I'm ahead of you because I've had a hate finger for many years.
Hate finger.
Hate finger. The man with the malcontent's touch. Yeah.
Turn Up the Night with Kenny Pick, streaming live every Tuesday and Friday from 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern at Radio or Not, Talk Radio 1, Progressive Blend Radio, and KennyPick.com.
Hi, friends. This is Tom Hartman.
This is Stephanie Miller.
Hey, this is Hal Sparks.
I'm Brad Friedman. I approve of Nicole Sandler's RadioOrNot.com.
Radio or Not.
Radio or Not.
RadioOrNot.com. RadioOrNot.com.
RadioOrNot.com. RadioOrNot.com.
Unfiltered truth, news, and opinion. Filter-free radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
There's protesters waking up and people are getting in the streets. People want the truth. People are becoming active because, quite frankly, people are fed up. And we see things like Occupy Wall Street and Occupy whatever have you. These independent, nonpartisan movements growing. The status quo is scared. There is fear amongst those in power, and they want to maintain their power.
Live every Monday, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern.
They have to have Homeland Security keep tabs on Occupy Wall Street, or pass new bills that say it's illegal to protest, or suppress.
When these institutions no longer serve the function for which they were created, they are limited to force or fraud as the only means by which to keep people in check. And soon, force is all they have left, as people are starting to see through the fraud. So what are we going to do about it?
FilterFreeRadio.com.
The worst is yet to come, and babe, won't it be bad? We've killed the fish, the plants, and now I'm getting mad. Wait till the cleanup never ends. Wait till the beach is gone. Wait till you see them all in court, laughing like Satan's spawn.
Welcome back to the Nicole Sandler Show. Jacob Dean filling in for Nicole here on RadioOrNot.com, TalkRadio1.com, SoFloRadio.com, ProgressiveBlendRadio.com, We Act Radio, 1480 AM in Washington, D.C., on YouTube, podcasters, and everywhere else in between. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to get right to him. On the line is an author of the book Earth, EAARTH, the founder of 350.org, and one of my personal heroes, really truly doing God's work, the environmental activist, Bill McKibben. Bill, it is such a pleasure and an honor to speak with you.
Well, Jacob, the pleasure is mine. Thank you very much for having me on.
I just read, I got in the mail, I subscribed to Rolling Stone, and I just read one of the most shocking articles I've ever read on climate change, written by you. I've got the picture up for those of us who are watching the video stream of the cover of the new Rolling Stone that's going to come out next month. And Bill, I just want to throw it to you. There's three really important numbers that people need to know about, and looks like we have a nailed down a target here. For lack of a better term, and I know you talk about in the article, you don't really want to use the term enemy, but I'd love for you to talk about these three really important numbers and who we need to be kind of targeting here.
Well, thank you for those words. And the piece is actually up now online, so people can go see it at Rolling Stone or at 350.org. Look, I wrote the first book about climate change 25 years ago now, I guess. And at the time, it was an abstract proposition. Now, clearly, it's not. We're seeing the first wave of what climate change looks like with these heat waves and droughts and sea level rise and so on. But the numbers in this piece are scary. There are three of them. One is 2 degrees. That's what the world has agreed, even the most conservative countries and leaders, is the most that we can let temperatures rise. The second number is 565 gigatons of carbon. That's about how much scientists think we can emit over the next 35 years or so and have any chance of staying below that 2-degree level. It's like knowing what the legal drinking limit is and how many beers you can drink in a night and stay below it. So maybe 4 or 5,
Right.
The third number, the really scary one and the sort of new one, is 2,795 gigatons, or about 5 times that 565 figure. That's how much carbon the fossil fuel industry has in its reserves of coal and oil and gas that they are planning to burn. This is oil that's still below ground, but economically it's above ground. They're borrowing money against it. It's what their share price is based on. They're planning to burn it. What this means is that we now understand for the first time that the business plans of the fossil fuel industry, if carried out, are completely incompatible with anyone's vision of a healthy planet. There's no way, short of stopping those business plans, putting a stiff price on carbon that'll keep most of that coal and oil and gas underground, to have any hope of dealing with climate change. So it's a kind of grim article, but it at least tells us where we need to go, that we have, met the enemy and they is shell,
Yes.
That we're going to need a kind of movement that looks like the divestment movement around apartheid a generation ago, say, if we're going to get anywhere.
And, I mean, you mentioned you wrote one of the first books on climate change. I mean, we've only known for about 25 years that carbon is a problem. And as you say, we've got 3 significant numbers here. We can't warm the planet by any more than 2 degrees Celsius. There's and scientists and everyone have compiled and said that we have, our limit is 565 gigatons of carbon that we can put into the atmosphere before we hit that threshold of changing the planet by 2 degrees. And the fossil fuel industries have in their reserves 2,795 gigatons of
That's right.
carbon.
So the legal drinking limit's 0.8. You can drink 4 beers and stay below it. And the fossil fuel industry has popped the top on 3 6-packs and put them out on the table.
And I mean, I was a big advocate of President Obama, and he ran as we talked about before, Bill, when he won. He mentioned, with his presidency, we'll see the lowering of the sea level and the healing of the planet. And at the same time, he's turning around and looking for more carbon reserves for the fossil fuel industry here.
Yes, at the moment, I'm afraid the one thing that most of our political leaders here and elsewhere agree on is that we should be finding more fossil fuel. The trouble is, the one thing our physicists and chemists agree on is we should be finding a lot less fossil fuel, that we've got to keep this stuff in the ground.
And you kind of sum up the article, Bill, in the Rolling Stone. It's going to be coming, like you said, it's online now, rollingstone.com. And the magazine version comes out in August. And you write, Bill, to make a real difference, you'll need to change carbon pricing in Washington and then use victory to leverage similar shifts around the world. What happens in the U.S. is most important for how it will influence China and India. The greatest challenge humans have ever faced. We know how much we can burn, and we know who's planning to burn more. What is, without keeping you around too much longer, because you're a busy man, and I appreciate you coming by, Bill, how do we get our listeners and people engaged and involved to really make an effort to make a significant difference with the fossil fuel industry here?
If people would just go to 350.org, which is the headquarters for this sort of growing global citizens grassroots aroused campaign around this stuff, we'll be keeping people completely in touch. Naomi and Klein and I are going to do a big road show beginning in a few months that'll take this new mathematics to every corner of the country in an effort to really kind of spur the next wave of this movement. And we'll let you know when we're going to be in your city and how you can join in this fight.
Sounds great, Bill, and I'll leave our folks with this last quote from your article. If you put a price on carbon through a direct tax or other method, it would enlist markets in the fight against global warming. Once Exxon has to pay for the damage its carbon is doing to the atmosphere, the price of its products will rise, and consumers will get a strong signal to use less fossil fuel. Bill McKibben, I just want to say, bless you, brother, for all the phenomenal work you're doing. You're doing real work about real issues that really affect us, and I can't thank you enough.
Back at you, brother. Take care.
All right. Thanks, Bill, and have a good day. Keep up the great work out there, buddy. Bill McKibben, founder of 350.org. Check out the website, 350.org, and also, of course, the author of the book, Earth, spelled with two A's, E-A-A-R-T-H. Scott, you haven't talked for 10 minutes because that was really quick and Bill had to run. What your thoughts?
Well, I mean, we didn't even, I wish we would have been on longer. I have a million questions for him.
Exactly.
We didn't, I think the point to remember here is that the question is not, do we need to do anything about this? Is it, I think the question is, what are we going to do and how fast can we do it? And the other question I want to ask him is it too late? I mean, a lot of scientists say, I would encourage people, I need to find this link, but David Suzuki was on Democracy Now! A little while ago with Amy Goodman, and he talks about the Rio +20 summit and how it's just such a fraud. And so we have not only our society, not America and corporate America, but the planet, globally, other countries as well are just polluting to the point of death. We've outsourced all of our sweatshops to China. And so in China, they're, when you throw away an old computer, the motherboard goes back to China and they melt it down over an open flame to get the mercury out of it. And it's unbelievably poisonous over there in certain parts. And so you think it's bad here. And so when you keep that in perspective in a global sense, where are we in this planet of trying to maintain a biosphere that's livable for all of species? I think we're doing a very bad job of that. And so you have to ask yourselves, what in our culture, what in our daily lives, what in our society needs to change in order to sustain human life? And there's a lot of things. And the most important thing I think to remember too, and this is what makes Al Gore so pernicious, is that it's not, we can all change our light bulbs to fluorescent light bulbs, or we can drive electric cars or whatever. It's not going to make a difference. Most of what is being done to the environment is not done by you and me, but done by these large multinational corporate forces and the military itself. And let's face it, the largest polluter of carbon in the United States is the military. The U.S. military uses most of it. And so that's just one example. And these are all things that you and I, the ownership society that's been placed upon us. In other words, it's up to you and I to live green, and all these things. And that is true in some respects. However, we can do it all we want, and it won't make a difference unless we stop these forces that are killing us. And I mean literally, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here, they're literally killing the planet and in turn killing us. And so the question then is, how do we stop these forces? Because I don't have to switch to fluorescent light bulbs. If I had a solar panel on my roof and was completely off the grid, it wouldn't matter. I had pure and clean renewable energy. And so the goal is to get off fossil fuels entirely and not just partially. And that means natural gas and all that other crap that's killing the planet. And how do we do that? How do we stop these large institutions, be it our U.S. government or foreign governments or foreign corporations or multinational corporations or whoever? I mean, BP is one small example. Bhopal, what's the Union Carbide? What they did to Bhopal, India, years ago, as another example. And all these institutions aren't being punished and have not been punished, and they continue to pollute at astounding rates. And so I think being aware of it is a start. The next start is, how do we stop it? And even if we did stop it, is it too late? So
I read this entire article yesterday, and I've got so many notes marked up in the article. I want to say, I think first of all, to start with, you should read the article yourself. That's kind of where I find all of my motivation is. I've been tired of getting all of my news and information secondhand. And once you get information and news and these things secondhand, it obviously has been passed through filters. And that's the kind of point of my show that I do here on Radio or Not on Monday nights, filter-free radio, unfiltered. And that's kind of a call to independent media activists to go out and be the media. Take your audio recorder, take your camera to the scene and get the news as it happens, as it really happens, when it happens.
Well, yeah. But what you're talking about is establishing new and parallel institutions to replace the old dead ones. And the argument is, can we revive media? Can we revive fill in the blank? Can we take these institutions back and make them support and serve the people for which they were originally intended? And the answer is no. Yep. You have to. The way it works is you have to create a new form to replace that dead system. And then eventually when that system collapses, which it'll collapse on its own, we'll be there and others will be there to replace it with something that's more a servant of the planet, of the people, of humanity, and just, I think, doing good, whatever the good may be defined as, versus doing bad and killing us. So,
what I took away from Bill's article is the fact that, first of all, like I expressed my concern to Bill when he was on, we've only known that carbon emissions are bad for 25 years. I'm only 24 years old. I'll throw that out there. So we've known that carbon's bad for about as long as I've been around, which isn't very long when you look at the bigger picture here. And second of all, we've learned some kind of concrete numbers here. If the planet, the atmosphere, the Earth's atmosphere warms up by 2 degrees Celsius, it hits a threshold at which it will change and it will affect us. So the planet cannot reach this particular threshold of which there is really no return. Now, that threshold is set, the 2 degrees Celsius mark is set by a number based on carbon emissions, and that is the second important number here. That's 565 gigatons of carbon. What that means is that's how much we have left to be able to put into the atmosphere before we reach that 2 degrees Celsius point. We can put 565 gigatons of carbon into the atmosphere, and at that point, that's it. Like, like Bill was talking about. It's kind of like a drinking limit, more or less. And then the third number, and this is the scariest number of all, we learned how much we actually have in reserves right now in our nation, in the entire world, 2,795 gigatons. We're only allowed to put into the atmosphere 565 gigatons. We have 2,795 gigatons available. Here's where it gets scary. And this is, as I talked to Bill before we went on the air, he says, I've only got a couple minutes, I'm busy. Everybody wants to talk to Bill right now, which is great. And I'm happy he gave us a couple minutes. What's really scary is you talk about the fossil fuel industry. You talk about the Koch brothers. You talk about these really small, really rich owners of the fossil fuel industry. What do they care about? What is the only thing that they care about? Money, profits. To the extent, if you know anything about futures trading, if you know anything about Wall Street and the stock market and these other things, pretty much how these industries work is they take a look at all of their reserves, and then they based all of their numbers, all of their profit projections and these other things on their reserves. So in essence, the fossil fuel industries, these owners, the Koch brothers, have, even though that number, 2,795 gigatons of carbon, is still in the ground, as far as are concerned, as far as profits are concerned, and money, because it's all about the money, as Ellen Ratner said, money runs this country earlier, they have already got that carbon out of the earth and into the atmosphere as far as profits and money is concerned. That's why this is such a big frickin' deal. And we talk about how are we going to fix this? It seems like what I take away from Bill McKibben's article is the only way that we can actually save the planet and meet this threshold and stop it before it gets too bad is if we keep that carbon in the ground. It can't come up. And that means having to tell a few really, 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 really rich people that, sorry, you can't have any more money, you know? And that's really what it comes down to, taxing the carbon and getting active in the movement against the fossil fuel industry, which, as we laid out by a brilliant article by Derrick Jensen, it's not sustainable. The answers are here. It's staring us right in the face. It's a wake-up call. The writing is on the wall. Do we have the will to do it? That is, the real question here. Do we have the will to do this? This is some scary stuff, This is some really, really scary stuff. And as Bill said, we have 5 times the amount of fossil fuels on the books as scientists think is safe to burn. And before we knew that, our fate was likely, but now that we know this, it kind of seems certain. Wouldn't you agree? Just a little bit of food for thought. Read Bill McKibben's article. This is so brilliant. And check out his website, 350.org, for more information. The reason why, and we've only got a couple minutes here left in the Nicole Sandler program. It's been a pleasure and an honor filling in for Nicole today. I hope we've satisfied you as Nicole surrogates today, and pretty big shoes to fill. I hope we did an okay job. But one of the reasons why I wanted to spend today and my opportunity with you today talking about climate change and the earth and reading Derrick Jensen's article, having Bill McKibben on, talking about the drought, the corn crops, the effects of all of this, really all comes down to one point for me. Being a more or less a kind of a environmental focused activist myself. I'm from Portland, Oregon. That might have something to do with it. But it's kind of like when you stop and you look at the big picture here, our planet is only so big. and the population and the rate of increasing population is ever increasing. You look at all of the, you look at all the numbers, you look at all the facts. I mean, right now, for example, we are admitting worldwide about 31.6 gigatons of carbon a year. And it goes up about 3% each year at the current rate right now. 31 gigatons a year. And remember, we only have 565 gigatons before we go overboard. If you do the math, that's 17.8 years, or about 17 years, if we stay at our current rate. If we don't do something about this, then we will affect the planet. If we make significant changes to the planet, that is our habitat, that is from which we survive and live and thrive and breathe and eat and drink, then we are effectively killing ourselves, whether it be willfully or unwillingly. We are killing ourselves. And so it's kind of like if we don't do anything about it, we're going to lose by default anyways. So the future is kind of set. What's going to happen? We know what's going to happen here. The scientists know what's going to happen here. Of course, you have propaganda pushing machines, things like Fox News out there, with paid shills, people paid to lie to you. By the way, they're paid by the people who own the fossil fuel industry, who are going to benefit on releasing the carbon into the atmosphere and destroying the planet. They don't care about you. There's a great riff from George Carlin that we play on Filter Free Radio occasionally, talking about the real owners of this country, the real owners of this planet. They don't care about you. They don't care about you. They care about themselves and money. We have a greed problem, and it's going to take some real, sit down and have a good long look in the mirror before we wake up and go, holy crap, we have made a long series of choices that are eventually going to kill us. And if we don't correct that thinking now, the evolutionary path is pretty grim. So, without being all doom and gloom and these kinds of things, I mean, the point here is there is hope. We've got about 16 years worth of hope left to stop the fossil fuel industry. If that isn't motivation enough for, getting active and doing something about it, then I don't know what will motivate you. And if nothing will motivate you, then I don't know really what to say other than disparity here is not an option. Do you care about living? Do you care about the future? Do you care about your children or your grandchildren? Or if you don't have kids, do you care about your friends' grandchildren or your relatives, et cetera, et cetera? The future? Do you care about your legacy? Do you care about that at all? I want to leave you with one thought. We've only got a couple minutes left here. And I want Scott to have a minute here to say his piece before we go too. But I just want to leave you with one thought here on the Nicole Sandler Show on Radio or Not. Every minute of the day, every second that you are living and breathing, you are writing your story. Every second, every millisecond, you're writing your own story. We all have a story. And from the second you're born to the second you die, you are writing your story. With everything you say, with everything you do, you're writing your story. And someday, somebody is going to come back and read your story and go through it. And the question that I want to leave you with is, how do you want your story to turn out? How do you want your story to turn out? How do you want people to reflect back on you when you're gone? Do you want them to say, this person did amazing work and they were always a good person, they did the right thing, and they fought for the good cause? That's the person I want to be. And I'm doing everything I can in my power to write my story every second of the day. So I want you to think about that, about how you're writing your story, and, stop and think about it. What would your story say right now? If someone were to read your story right now, what would they say about it? We've got about a minute to go, Scott. Thanks for hanging in there with me, buddy. Your final thoughts.
It's just a minute? Oh, man. I could do this for an hour.
Another hour?
Yeah, well, just to tie it all together, I think it's important to acknowledge harsh realities. I get criticized by my friends and family for being negative. And, I am, I suppose, negative because the topics I discuss are very doomy and gloomy. But it's important to be, this is obviously the phrase of people who are pessimists, but to be realistic. I think at this point we're deluding ourselves into thinking that if we don't do something that things will be fine. And the reality is it's going to be forced upon us whether we make that decision or not. So the question is, do you want to make the decision ahead of time and get out in front of these crises, or do you want to let them affect you and then react to them later? So I think it's important to be proactive rather than reactive, and to acknowledge that the things we are doing are killing us, literally. And I'm sorry that it's so negative, but that's where we are. And so it's a cold, harsh assessment of reality, and it's time to do something about it.
So get out there and get active. Scott, you've got the last word on this edition of the Nicole Sandler Show on Radio or Not, Talk Radio 1, SoFlo Radio, Progressive Blend Radio, We Act Radio, 1480 AM in Washington, D.C. on YouTube, podcasters, and everyone else in between. My name is Jacob Dean. It has been such an honor and a pleasure to fill in for Nicole today. Check out Nicole tomorrow in for Randy Rhodes Nationwide. And we'll see you on down the road. Check out our show, Filter Free Radio, Monday nights here on Radio or Not. And have a great rest of the weekend. Thank you again to Nicole Sandler for letting us fill in. Have a great day, everyone.